space combat, Star Wars, one thing comes to mind instantly is Rogue Squadron.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite space combat Star Wars moment ever. And it's one of those things where you get into a starship and you go out there and you just fight wave upon wave of guys. And, and there's the levels where you have to take down the capital ships and you got to go through and blow out the shield generators and stuff like that. And man, that's just like the epitome of Star Wars space combat to me. I just absolutely loved that game.
Yeah. I probably need to give you my geek card a little bit because the extent of my Star Wars space combat is like Rebel Assault 2 when I was in like 4th grade. So I don't really remember a whole lot of anything. You know, most of my experience in space combat comes from games like, you know, Star Fox 64, Freelancer, you know, it's just like a couple different areas in, you know, like my gaming history. You know, like the first time I got Star Fox 64, popped it into my Nintendo, you know, that was so much fun. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed that style of combat.
You're not as tough as I thought.
I'll do you fast, peppy old pal. Sorry, guys, I gotta sit this one out.
It's crazy to think how space combat has evolved over the years. I mean, I think of the original Shadows of the Empire game on Nintendo 64, and the first time you got into an airspeeder in that game and you had to take down AT-AT walkers, and how people just gravitated towards that, and then they were like, well, let's make a whole series kind of based off that. And then you can go back even further, like X-Wing and TIE Fighter, which I never played those games, and a lot of people older than me that played them just go on and on about how magnificent the combat was, the simulation was in those games, and so it's really cool. And when you look at all these kind of iconic games for space combat, most of them are centered around the Star Wars universe, which is why I think a lot of people have high expectations for space combat in the Old Republic.
So the thing about space combat in the Old Republic that's gotten a lot of people riled up since they first announced it a couple months ago is the fact that it's in many ways on rails. You know, we control our XY position on the screen, but our forward progression is all pre-programmed more or less.
Kind of like the old Contra game.
Exactly, or even like Star Fox 64, like I mentioned, you know, and a lot of people seem to have a problem with that, but when I think about some of like those huge epic space battle sequences, especially in like episodes 1 through 3, like the footage that they've shown off so far of in the Old Republic is like identical to that. It totally grabs that thing that made those seem so epic.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of people are concerned about not having the freedom to explore in the game. Like, is that going to impact your fun experience? Are you going to be able to enjoy it? And like you were saying, Star Fox 64 it instantly popped in my mind as, yeah, this is the game to compare it to. This is what it's going to look like, and I enjoyed that game. I had a lot of fun with it.
So much fun.
Doing barrel rolls and everything.
Actually, there was a video recently. It was a show on G4, IGN, and like a guy was sitting down playing the Old Republic, and he's like, "How do I barrel roll?" And Leo Oleb was like, "Just press spacebar. You can do a barrel roll." But I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, those games in a lot of ways were simple, but they were so much fun. And that's what it seems like the developers are so good at doing, is identifying those things in other games that are really good, and then bringing them into the Old Republic with a really fresh look.
Well, and it's a beautiful looking MMO, and the reason why I think they're able to capture that look is because it is on a rail system. Everything is kind of static in the environment, so they can throw in these really high-res backdrops, and you don't have to worry about having 3D models that have to be rendered and moving around and particles and all that kind of stuff. So you can show the viewer what you want, and if they can't get past that point, then you don't have to worry about loading all this other stuff. And it allows them to make a really gorgeous looking space combat sim in an MMO setting.
I mentioned that, you know, there have been a lot of people unhappy so far with the direction of space combat in the Old Republic. You know, how controlled the system seems to be, despite the fact that it looks gorgeous. And there's two things we have to keep in mind. One is we've seen such a tiny snippet so far. You know, there's the game systems page and a video, and maybe a couple interviews, and that's about it. But what we do know is that they're not entirely opposed to opening it up to different things, like PvP being slightly more open world, and I imagine that's something you're pretty interested in.
Well, that's something I would like to see. I mean, we were talking about Freelancer earlier. Obviously, I don't think that it'll ever develop into something that quite, complex. But looking at the Hero Engine and what the Hero Engine can do, I know there's a video out there showing what I think is kind of like something from Stargate.
Yeah,
Universes
it's fairly old, but yeah.
But it was space combat for a game using the Hero Engine, and it has the ship flying around freeform, and it's taking out specific turrets and things like that on ships. There's particle effects, stuff like that. So there's definitely the potential there.
There's so much room to grow
for some sort of PvP combat eventually. And I imagine it's one of those things that they don't want to funnel maybe a lot of resources into, because it would be so ambitious on top of all the other stuff they're doing
exactly.
Right now.
Yeah.
That they probably want to just see if the game's successful, if people like the space combat system that they do have, and then where to take it from there.
Yeah, at the very minimum, this game is going to come out in like 4 or 5 months or so. So, I mean, there's still a lot of time for them to show us things about space combat. Like, if there was one thing that you really wanted to see about space and being in your ship and stuff like that, what would that look like to you?
It definitely have to be customization. I'd like to be able to see that I can modify my ship. Han Solo talks about all the special modifications he has on the Millennium Falcon. And I want to know that I can do that to my ship. I can have my own little touch to where if your friend's watching you do something and you shoot this weapon that's just, this crazy burst, and he's like, oh my goodness, that was cool. Where'd you get that? And you're like, oh, I bought it on Nal Hutta from some random trader or something like that. I like to see those kind of little things, or even the ability to maybe just change the color scheme of your ship. Especially, and I think that's important, particularly for player housing too.
Oh yeah, totally. That's this game is obviously going to appeal to a lot of people who played Galaxies before, and from what I've read, that's one of the biggest things that people thought Galaxies nailed right, was player customization and like player housing and things like that. I've seen pictures of ships that the graphics may not be up to snuff, but like the amount of things that people could just like put in their ship, like hang big crate dragon heads and stuff, like that stuff is really cool, and I think people totally get into that kind of thing. At the very minimum, we've had it confirmed that your ship is going to kind of act like your bank. Like you go into your cargo hold and you can put stuff there, and that's a start in the right direction. But yeah, I would totally agree with you, customization, because we know that further down the line they're probably going to address PvP or opening it up a little bit, and one of the biggest things that they can do that's fan service that people will just totally love is the ability to hang stuff up and show off the things that you've done in your ship.
So talking about player starships, things you're going to be able to do inside these starships, and customization, what do you think about your starship as being your player house?
Well, I never played Galaxies. I never played Lord of the Rings Online. I never played a game where player housing was a big thing. Much less one where you had your own house and it was actually out in the universe that people could come and visit. That said, I have played Mass Effect. I have played Knights of the Old Republic, and in those games, your ships were your houses. You finished your thing and you went back to your ship and you logged off. And in the Old Republic, your companions live there, you do all your crafting there, you have your own little quarters, and for me, as someone who's never done a player housing thing before, that's totally perfect. I'm totally okay with that.
And I can agree with you. I haven't played an MMO where player housing was a part of it, and it was something that was huge. I have played games like Animal Crossing, where you've got your home and you collect stuff and you stick it in there. And I do want player housing to be a little bit more than something like that. But at the same time, like if that is what kind of the extent of what player housing is going to be, I hope they give you lots of stuff you can stick in there. Now, your house is going to go with you wherever you go. If you're on Tatooine or Coruscant or Jomon Ka, it's your ship. So it's going to be all over the galaxy. So I want to see them give us just thousands of different Easter eggs, scavenger hunt type things that you can collect and stick in your ship, so that way when you bring a player over, it's like, wow, where did you get this? And it was like, oh yeah, I was on Voss and like I found it, and you know, I just brought it back to my ship and it's still here. Or you go over to your buddy's ship and you look at all the stuff he's collected or accumulated, and like if you have that kind of scavenger hunt type of effect, it's going to make players want to go to their ship, and that's just one possibility of what you could use player housing for. It's funny because talking to you, I feel like sometimes you really don't even care about player housing.
Well, I don't care about a lot of things, is the problem. No, I mean, I'm not the type of person who looks at a thing that a game developer shows off and goes, oh god, that's gonna be terrible, it's crap.
Or this is the most awesome thing ever, this game's gonna be awesome.
Right, you know,
it's awesome.
I see this a whole lot, but the thing is, what they've shown off looks really good.
Yeah.
You know, just seeing some of the footage of space combat, like the backgrounds look gorgeous, the ships look cool, the combat looks kind of fun at the very least.
It's gonna be a great mini game just to
exactly.
get away from PvP and PvE.
Yeah, and you know, BioWare's got a track record with player housing. You know, I've played Mass Effect 2, I've hung out on the Normandy. It's got a great feel. You know, you run around your ship, you talk to your different companions in the areas that they kind of hang out, and it just works really well.
You know, I agree wholeheartedly with everything that you're saying. And there are a lot of desires and changes that people would like to see in the game. That doesn't mean that it won't happen. But BioWare is a reputable company, and they can release these changes through either patches, through possible expansions in the future. And I think we just need to stand back and give them their time, and we'll just see what happens.
Looks really cool, and I just want to get in and hang out in that area and actually feel it for myself. I just...
Wow. Okay, so...
the best sentence I've ever said in my life.
Yep.
I just want to get in, hang out in that area, and feel it for myself.
Oh my god!